But to your point, not everyone can afford quality. Yes, that is true. But the Prophet Muhammad SAW did instruct his Sahaba and us to dress according to our income bracket. So he forbids a rich man to dress like a poor man. So it must be better appreciated in the context of don't be wasteful in buying more than what you need. And then you're hoarding and holding on to clothes and shoes that don't require that you don't require when they can actually go to charity, inshallah. Then when you detach, you allow space for the barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you're holding on to things, then you're just being wasteful, and Allah loveth not the wasters. So besides the dopamine rush from spending, the Quran also tells us that those who rush to buy continuously are the brothers of shaitan, because you're boosting the corporates and their plans. And of course, they have other agendas that are also very unwholesome and destructive to the rest of humanity. So it's about being selective, and both religion and business ethics agree on delayed gratification. Just wait, hold out if you can. If you're converting money energy into charity energy for the sake of Allah, then you're more likely to be successful in this lifetime and the next life, bi-idhni Allah. So now getting back to the shayateen and the corporates, it might help us to make this distinction between the rich or the wealthy, especially in the light of what Dan Lok was saying, and what I loosely quoted last week. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad SAW and Khadija salam, there's two types of rich people, as there are today, since this is very much a universal theme. There were the people like Abu Jahl and people like Khadija salam. So sometimes when someone says rich person or rich people, like we tend to think of today's Abu Jahls. We tend to think of the, like the disaster capitalists and the type of people that are mentioned in conspiracy theories. We don't think of Khadija alayhi salam. We don't think of somebody like her. And who even before she embraced Islam, was a woman of great character and social consciousness. And so there are people like her today, and that includes, I think Dan Lok himself has some of those qualities, inshallah. So Allah knows best. But despite being abrupt and coming across as harsh, which is fairly typical characteristic of many business people and their tendency to be offensive. In fact, Dr. Romani, who does a whole series on narcissism, she mentions that some corporate people can come across as narcissistic, especially when it comes to their time. Steve Biko said that in African culture, in his book, I Write What I Like, he says that, in African culture, you give people of your time generously, but in the Western culture, people are more corporate and they're more stingy and impatient with their time. So that doesn't mean the person's a narcissist. It can come across as narcissistic, so you're going to have to test them with either criteria to be sure. So in Dan Lok's case, first of all, he's coming from a place of adversity, not privilege, and he also can't be expected to factor in every human condition across the globe while speaking to his target market. In marketing, if you're speaking to everyone, then you're speaking to no one, so you have to be very focused and specific. It's important that the speaker talks as if he is addressing a room with only his students, so that the message doesn't get watered down and missed by the specific group that needs it. So let me give him a better introduction now that I have my notes in front of me. Dan Lok has become my virtual figurative rich dad, even though I think he might be younger than me. And if you listen in 2 weeks ago, I talked about Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because we were talking about Khadija, how her biological father was also her rich dad in a sense, because she had that mentorship, and how many of us have to actually listen to people online, like you either have to read or listen or attend meetings to get that type of influence, inshallah, if you want to grow in terms of business. So I find that my progress tends to correspond with going through that content. And this is also true for other marketers and salespeople. Other marketers, business people and salespeople, they'll also listen to other gurus or coaches or experts, and they'll read the content and they'll attend meetings. Dan Lok is, among many things, a TEDx speaker, serial entrepreneur, and best-selling author, but is best known as an online business guru who is featured heavily on social media platforms like Instagram, but has an extremely intensive playlist on YouTube and digital products on his website, which includes ebooks, online courses, and various products. I have double-checked all the criticism and claims that he is, quote, fake, but I'm not satisfied with your limited findings, and from personal experience, his advice has helped me personally. If somebody criticizes Weight Watchers, I tend to obviously dismiss it because I lost the weight, I kept it off, so obviously it works for me. So that's my position. In case anybody's listening and they find dirt on him, we're like, well, my position is what it is because I got results. Okay, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. You can call him a fake, but if you want to, but my progress is real. Dan Lok started off as a Chinese immigrant in Canada, living with his divorced mother in a one-bedroom flat, not able to speak English, shy and struggling. He actually wanted to be a martial arts trainer, but was inspired to aim bigger, but includes his passion for martial arts in his channel, holding martial arts related content, which are also extremely beneficial. He likes to be called sifu, which means teacher, since his passion for teaching has become transferred from martial arts to business. His business teaching style and income generating skills are all influenced by his martial arts training, which was more predominantly Wing Chun based. Wing Chun was developed and founded by a woman who cultivated the style so that she could defend herself, and that might be the reason why I, as a woman, prefer Dan Lok as my go-to guru instead of the others, because there is this feminine pullback ying style which resonates, whereas the other gurus, the other online coaches and experts, they have too much of this Western cowboy yang style, which I find quite jarring to my own energy. So he made the intention to be successful and tried various projects and failed many times. But it was the mentorship with a successful copywriter where he, despite the language challenges, started copywriting and scaled from there. From there, he went into marketing strategies and consulting. Other income-generating skills that we discussed are related to, so I'm not going to go through all of them again, but, we discussed that there are communication and relationship-orientated. They're all connected to communication, relationships, and character in some way, until we have the wealth triangle as opposed to loans for property. Last year, this time, we considered what skills Khadija alayhi salam have. So we actually went through those income-generating skills, and then we considered Khadija alayhi salam's situation back then. So what skills would you use? Obviously, closing, because you're talking to people one-on-one. Public speaking, teamwork, because if you've got a business, you're dealing with other people.
Yes,
so we actually considered, okay, what we know based on Hadith, what skills did she have that she would have used in terms of how she communicated in the relationships that she had. And then we also considered local Muslim business owners using more halal solutions to expand their businesses despite the apartheid, because despite the apartheid restrictions, it came to our attention that there were local Muslim business owners that started businesses, like, for example, a bakery or a retail store, and then they simply duplicated that. And that's how they grew. So instead of doing loans for property or the other methods that are not technically halal, they basically started off as self-employed, grew as a business, then they multiplied the business, and then they just repeated that. And that's actually how they grew. SubhanAllah.
A recipe that worked.
A recipe that worked. They found a recipe that worked, and then they just expanded on it. It's actually quite simple if you think about it. We hold ourselves back because we overcomplicate things.
Yes, of course.
That's the problem. So, and it reminds me of I think I might have told this success story before in Malawi when Miriam Khatib, she went to Malawi. There was a similar discrimination with the Muslims, except this time it wasn't based on race, it was based on religion. And then she taught them the trench system. So they also became quite self-sufficient, but this time through feeding schemes, feeding themselves. And then they also duplicated that. And then they started businesses and they started building schools and started getting cars. So every year she went, she would find that the community was expanding and becoming more and more self-sufficient. And another situation that was similar was when I was working Khayelitsha and trying to raise funds at the same time. There was a Malawian sheikh who was running a madrasa, and the dawah took up most of his time. Local organizations were quite insensitive towards his situation, and when I approached him on his behalf, they would say things like, well, he could just get a job and then use his income to support his madrasa. Yeah, not take into consideration that running a madrasa is a full-time job and takes up a lot of head space, So I told him straight that we're not getting support and we're gonna have to be self-sufficient. And then I went back to him a couple of weeks later and saw that he started his own urban food garden to support his soup kitchen. And then he also took on the same skills as the trench system, and then he expanded from there. Alhamdulillah. So, however, he's showing a lot of initiative. However, he is still technically considered poor, even though he doesn't have the qualities that Dan Lok was describing in that particular video when he was talking about poor people. So that went viral because, he was speaking in a very specific context. So moving forward, I'm going to translate his speech. I'm going to translate Dan Lok's speech to accommodate our broader spectrum of situations locally. So, for example, instead of saying rich versus poor, I'm going to use terms like thrivers or growth-oriented people versus nafs-oriented people. I just think because I see when he's talking about rich people, I actually see some of those people in Khayelitsha, even though they're still technically poor because of their circumstances, you do see growth. You see accountability, you see initiative, you see growth. So, but they're still technically poor because of the situation. So I think to say growth orientated versus nafs orientated is a better term to use.